time, at the time of taking the jinn out of the possessed one. So you're taking the jinn out. At that time, can you make some negotiation with the jinn? Please address these two questions.
Okay, the one about Madison Square Garden, I should just mention that there was a lecture given there back, I think, in the end of January, and I didn't attend. I wasn't able to attend, and I gave my presentation over the microphone, or over the telephone, and then it was broadcast there. The only thing I'd like to mention from it is that in the course of the lecture, I did mention something which is, I think we should be aware of, and that is that the practice of intermediation, that is calling on others besides Allah, this practice, which had been widespread amongst Muslims up until recent times, with the revival of Islam in the various parts of the Muslim world, through the various movements and organizations, etc., people have been moving away from this, realizing and understanding that this is in fact shirk. It is not acceptable Islamically to call on anyone other than Allah. And I just mentioned in the course of the lecture that there is an individual, and probably a number of other people with that individual, who is currently, trying to revive this, calling back on others, meaning specifically calling on Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in prayer. And that individual, his name is Nur Hamim Keller. He's written a book called The Reliance of the Traveler, right? It's translated work of one of the early Shafi'i scholars. But in the appendix of that book, he brings about 10 pages, a 10-page argument for justification for praying to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, to direct prayer to him. And I just mentioned it in the course of that lecture. It created a bit of a reaction there in New York, because perhaps a number of people who are in the audience were amongst his followers or those who are enamored by some of his ideas. But I felt it was my duty to clarify, when I was addressing different issues that the Ummah is faced with today. I clarified that this was one of the modern attempts to revive an evil amongst the Ummah, because our basic foundation is that Allah alone is our Lord, and He alone deserves our worship. And to call on anyone in prayer is to worship them. It is an act of worship. Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah." That dua, when you call, make supplication, that is an act of worship. To whoever that supplication is directed, it becomes an act of worship to that person. So you cannot say, I'm calling on Muhammad ﷺ and asking him to take my prayers to Allah, that really I'm worshipping Allah, I'm just asking the Prophet ﷺ to convey it. No, if you have called on Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you have worshipped him. Because only Allah can answer our prayers, as He told us, "Ud'uni astajib lakum." Call on me and I will answer you.
There were other questions about the jinns, for example.
Oh, okay. Now our question about the good jinns. We know that the jinns are divided into believers and disbelievers, just as amongst ourselves. Now what about the believing jinn? We know that the evil jinn are coming in, messing in our lives, and they are the source of a lot of the things that have to do with the ghosts and all these kind of things that amongst the non-believers. Now what about the good jinn? Can we have a good jinn that helps us out? We hear usually when people start talking about jinn stories, they always start talking about so-and-so who had a good jinn, who would come and clean their house and do these nice things for them and all these kind of things, right? Can we have such things? No, this is nonsense. This is nonsense, right? The jinn are prohibited from interfering in our world. They are prohibited. If there were going to be good jinns helping us, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would have had an army of them. The Sahaba would have had armies of them. And we don't have any record of any of the Sahaba having good jinns, coming around doing things for them and helping them, okay? So please believe that anybody who claims he has this good jinn helping him out, is either deluded, because again, the jinn, in catching a person, just like any satanic group or individual, they never come with their reality. They never show you who they are right from the beginning. right? They will come to you like a nice person, right? And offer you something which seems to be good. And then when they have trapped you, then their real selves will show. Okay? This is the standard way in which cults operate. Deviant individuals, evil individuals will tend to operate in the same way. So it's not surprising that perhaps amongst the jinn, there may be some that will come to people, give them the impression that they're helping them, and then after they've drawn them into their circle, then it will get from them the acts of shirk or whatever, or use them to misguide others.
This question defends the use of amulets or ta'weez. And it says these are given to people who did not read or write. Also, it is always the verses of the Quran. As far as the numbers are concerned, this science of numbers developed during the time of, can you read that?
Oh, Imam Ja'far Sadiq.
Imam Ja'far Sadiq. And the main reason for using numbers was that if the amulet falls down, then it is only a number. Also, people go to the washroom wearing amulets. So instead of wearing the verses themselves, it is just the numbers representing the verses. If numbers were not important, then why did Allah prescribe 2 rakats of Fajr, 4 for Zuhr, and so on? Your views on this, please?
The science of numbers was not developed during the time of Ja'far as-Sadiq. That's nonsense, first and foremost. The science of numbers was developed by the Jews. In the number system, which is similar to ours, which goes according to the Abjad system, this was developed by the Jews. The use of numbers to have meanings was ancient. It was from the time of the Greeks. The Pythagoras and his followers, they were involved in numerology. Numerology is an ancient pseudoscience. So it is not the time of Ja'far. Please, whoever said this is nonsense. Okay. Secondly, this explanation that it was used in the place of Quranic verses to avoid because it will be worn and taken into the bathroom and all that, that does not justify it. The early scholars prohibited it. They prohibited it because these numbers do not represent the verses that they claim that they represent. It is numerology, and numerology is among the forbidden sciences. They're pseudosciences. They're part of, fortune telling, and it's used for fortune telling. In fact, the person who used these numbers most recently is Rashad Khalifa. If you read his writings, he was heavily involved in this same abjad, calculations. And from it he was able to claim that he determined the exact date of Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is where this stuff leads to. So, this issue of numerology, we'll say it has no place in Islam at all. Actually, in the book I wrote called the Quran's Numerical Miracle, Hoax and Heresy, I went into a detailed chapter explaining about the history of numerology and its falsity, etc., etc. The other thing about if numbers weren't important, why did Allah prescribe 2 rak'ah for Fajr and 4 for Dhuhr? Please. Let us not compare numerology to the numbers that Allah has set for our prayers, etc. There is a vast difference. There's a world of difference. Because we don't take these numbers, because actually, those people who are involved in the same kind of numerology, you find amongst the Ismaili Shiites, those who will say, okay, because Fajr was 2 rak'ah, Dhuhr was 4 rak'ah, Asr was 4, and Maghrib is 3, and Isha is 4, that if you just say 2, 4, 4, 3, 4, you have done your 5 times daily prayer. Okay? Yes, that is nonsense, you see. That is using the numerology of the numbers which Allah has set. No, the 2 rak'ah which are set are 2 rak'ah to be prayed. Not to be said, to quote the number 2 and then it replaces prayer. So in that way, yes, a person would have definitely deviated, if they're going to understand the numbers and compare it in a similar light.
I have a report from the sisters area that some of the sisters are not interested, apparently, and so I would ask all of the sisters to appear interested.